talk briefly about the BRICS. These are not the red bricks coming from the brick kilns, but a grouping of developing countries, nations. B stands for Brazil, R for Russia, I for India, C for China, and S for South Africa. Uh, Compared to the other nation groupings, which are normally contiguous physically together, like the European Union, there is no gap in between. Now 30 countries. ASEAN, again 2 dozen countries, contiguous, though sometimes across the seas. NATO, which has some extras. It is Europe, plus it is USA, transatlantic, uh, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. But this is a military grouping of the white or West people, Western. We're talking about the economic ones. There were a number of other groupings which had come earlier in Latin America, LATAM, uh, Mercosur in Africa, which have not fully worked because they were actually managed by the ex-colonial countries themselves. European Union also took a lot of time to pick up, starting with 3 countries. It has taken them 25 years to come up to that particular level. They started as a community earlier for steel. It was called Steel Community, and then slowly became Economic Community with their own currency also called the EU. Now, what's BRICS? This name was suggested by one hedge fund manager of JP Morgan, almost in jest, uh, because these countries are from different parts of the world and were developing, and if they were to come together, they will be a very substantial part of the population and GDP of the world, and their problems were similar. The problems of G7, that is the European countries and USA and Japan and Korea, are different from the problems of the developing nations. They are developed nations, their issues are certainly different. They are at a different stage of technological development, social development, and so on and so forth. Now, the grouping slowly has taken up, but last 1 or 2 years, partly also because of Ukraine war, they have come closer together. This year presidency is with South Africa, and the President Ramaphosa is taking a lot of actions so that a large number of African countries come together along with the BRICS, through the medium of the African Union. Uh, Saudi Arabia has applied, Iran has applied, Turkey may want to come in, Venezuela may want to come in, and a number of others. Those who criticize it say that these are all the so-called गरीब मारा हुआ देश of the world, जिनको USA ने खूब मार लगाई हुई है, वो इकट्ठे हो रहे हैं. That means the nations which have been sanctioned by US, they want to come together, etc., etc. Maybe that is the reason. Why not? Because Russia, Iran, Venezuela, they are all out of SWIFT. They cannot interact financially with the rest of the world. So they have to get together somewhere else. So what can BRICS do? One of the things it has done is that on the pattern of the multilateral institution like World Bank, it has set up National Development Bank to do the development bank funding. Headquarters is in Shanghai. The first president was Mr. Vaman Kamath, the former chairman of ICICI Limited, and it started with $100 billion. Each of these 5 members have contributed $20 billion as equity first. And they have, in the last 2-3 years after they got going, though they are 7 years old now, done the financing of about $50 billion worth of developmental projects. So they have a chance to now compete with the World Bank and do things according to their particular choice. Now, coming to the process, these countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran have applied, and in the next meeting, which is there in the August um, um, 23, their application will be considered. Now, why are they applying? Basically, it is to create a counterweight to the hegemony of the West, the hegemony of the US, the hegemony of the reserve currency of the US. Um, US has a lot of advantage because the transactions are done basically in dollars, especially petroleum, which is the largest commodity. And those surpluses have to be invested uh, back into the US, China, Japan, Saudi Arabia, and one or two more other countries have something like well, certainly more than $2 trillion bonds invested in the treasury. The advantage of that, of course, is to the US economy, because to the US business people and to the hedge fund people also, they get their money at 0.5% or 1% interest, while the interest rates are very high, and therefore our guys can't compete. But then there is the question of development. There is lots and lots of resources in Africa, but also there is plenty of infrastructure which has to be developed. China has taken a lead. Russia has taken a lead in terms of when the nations had to be freed, and even now in various countries it sends its forces to take care that the terrorists and all that don't bother. Compared to that, though bases are there of USA, they have hardly done anything. India provided them COVID um, medicines, while the West did not provide them. India provides them medicines. Unfortunately, recently, wrongly also, cough syrup, that gives a bad scene. But there are a lot of things which these countries can help each other with. Brazil also has a lot of resources. Venezuela has, of course, the largest set of oil resources that they can be developed. So, China, on one hand, has been developing the BRI project, which is the single largest infrastructure project ever thought about by mankind. So that initiative, however, since the funding gets done by the banks, it is like commercial funding that becomes difficult to repay, and we've had these problems in Sri Lanka and Pakistan and other places for them to return the money of China. National Development Bank will follow the development bank strategies. It is a commercial, is a commercial professional entity, about 100 employees only, and they're doing a very good job so far. They've had no project which has gone bad and money not returned, and so on. And therefore it might substitute the BRI project of part of the BRI project of China, where people are thinking that it becomes a debt trap and China solves it. So, does the BRIC have future? In my view, yes, BRICS has future because there are objective conditions which exist. Does India have to benefit? Plenty, if it does not hold back because China is there, therefore whether to cooperate or not. It's an economic matter. It should not be confused with any water problems, and full cooperation should be there. And people cooperate in the UN. I mean, even people who are on the opposite side of wars cooperate. So why should India not cooperate with China? And if it does not, then it will become a grouping where the role of India will be less and the role of China will be more, because they have now more money to fund it. So BRICS Plus, therefore, is almost a certainty in the August meeting, 23. Saudi Arabia most probably will join. As they join, the other Middle Eastern countries will start joining. Iran most probably will join. And this is the way they will create a parallel financial system, and they are very happy with India and China that we are going ahead digitally, even far more than the West is doing. UPI yesterday, the Reserve Bank Governor just announced is now ready to take care of 100 crore transactions in a day. We've already reached 20, and they have three parallel paths by which they can do it. So the world has recognized, without much advertisements and so on and so forth, that India is good in vaccines, medicines, education, IT, and these matters, and therefore it's worth cooperating, and also in the new digital payment systems.